peoples have different obligations, because human rights are for advanced civilized peoples and not those for African and Asian societies. So says the Belgian ambassador to the UN. So from the point of view of these people, right, the argument that they're not ready for human rights is an argument they want to resist as part of their taking their place in the world of nations. So you'll see quoted in this the Jordanian foreign minister, Zayed Wahid Salah, argues against this much lamented monopoly, as he calls it, that the West claims on human rights, and that's denied to the smaller states of the world. The Yemeni prime minister does the same thing. An important Egyptian foreign minister and UN delegate, the same sorts of argument. In other words, they claim that this cultural relatives argument that many in the West are making is an argument against both their countries enforcing human rights and Western countries observing human rights in their countries. Right? So of course it's a very different political perspective. The odd thing, and he points this out, is that many of the so-called cultural relativists in this country and in the global South, speaking against human rights, sound very much like Western Europeans in 1948, 49, 50, speaking against human rights in the Third World on the basis of the Third World not being ready for these advanced Western ideas. So, my conclusion from this that I want to suggest to you is that in a global perspective, the adoption of human rights principles in this very broad sense is seen as part of what it is to be a modern state, and a state in the context. And the notion that we as a people are not ready for human rights it's also is seen as a colonial argument, not an anti-colonial argument. Right? So that does not mean that there aren't huge political debates about this, but just as a matter of political fact, it's not a universal West versus East, North versus South. And we'll see more of that as the course develops. So, I want to just conclude then with Pacem in Terra. It's an important document. The Catholic Church is the largest international organization in the world. Centrally administered, it's been the largest international organization in the world for a couple thousand years. So it's not inconsequential that it puts itself on this track. Now, it's not the whole church. It's this particular pope, John the 23rd, who was the great liberalizing pope of the 20th century, and a man who actively and against a great deal of opposition put his church, the church he was leading, in opposition to some of the traditions of the Catholic Church which you read about. This is against Sepulveda, or Sepulveda, as we read about him earlier. It's against the colonizing missionaries in the Congo who went along with the regime. It's against what he took to be the tradition of religious intolerance. So read this document. It's a remarkably liberal and important and progressive document, which puts in the context of Catholic thinking, that is to say, it's based on natural law. It's based on the unity of God. All peoples have these rights because we're all God's children. Human rights are a function not of national covenants, but of God's order. So it's not a secular document by any means. It's not a secular document. It's a papal encyclical. But it's a papal encyclical which puts the church on the same ground. Yes?
Was he the Pope during the first years, or was that Pius?
Sorry?
Was he the Pope during the first
Oh, no, that's Pius the 12th. No, exactly. No, he was the great liberalizer. He was the great, and much hated by conservatives. He was the man who brought the English Mass to the church. If you guys, any of you guys are Catholics now, the church you worship in is his church. Sorry? His. John Paul the 23rd. John the 23rd. John the 23rd. I mean, he's the maker of the modern. The Second Vatican Council made the modern church and put the Catholic Church in all sorts of directions, which all sorts of people fight against. And I mean, we're not, fascinating course on actually the politics of all this. But all I want to tell you right now is that at this moment we're talking about, sort of 48 to the early 60s, not just a secular organization, the United Nations, not just international third world countries, the Badung Conference, but also the Roman Church is, roughly speaking, producing this international order of human rights discussions and politics. So that's what I want to tell you, and that's the foundation for the kinds of conversations we're going to be having for the rest of the course. Okay? So no coffee today. Monday at 2 o'clock upstairs.